You know what's funny about being the quiet kid in class? Everyone assumes you're either secretly brilliant or completely lost. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Most quiet students aren't failing because they're dumb. They're failing because they're using the exact same study methods as everyone else, just quieter. Meet Sarah. 3 months ago, she was that student sitting in the back corner, barely scraping by with C- grades while watching her classmates effortlessly nail presentations and ace exams. Her parents were worried, her teachers had written her off, and honestly, she was starting to believe maybe she just wasn't cut out for academic success. Sound familiar? But then something shifted, not overnight, not through some miracle study app, and definitely not because she suddenly became an extrovert. Sarah discovered something that most students completely miss, something so simple it sounds almost stupid when you first hear it. And in just one semester, she went from barely passing to becoming the top student in her class. Now, before you roll your eyes and think this is another study 10 hours a day motivational speech, let me stop you right there. Sarah didn't start studying more. She didn't join study groups or suddenly become a social butterfly. She didn't even change her study location or buy expensive planners. What she did was flip one fundamental assumption that every student makes about learning. Here's what most people don't realize about academic success. It's not about how much information you can cram into your brain. It's not about highlighting every sentence in your textbook or taking notes that look like works of art. And it's definitely not about competing with the kid who raises their hand every 5 seconds. The real game changer? Sarah figured out that learning isn't about absorbing information passively. It's about creating a system where knowledge sticks without you having to force it. While her classmates were busy rereading chapters for the fifth time and making flashcards they'd never look at again, Sarah stumbled onto something completely different. This isn't about being naturally gifted or having some special talent. Sarah was average in every possible way, average grades, average participation, average everything. But she discovered that the students who consistently perform well aren't necessarily smarter. They're just approaching learning from a completely different angle. What I'm about to show you is the exact method Sarah used. It's not complicated, it doesn't require any special tools, and it works whether you're an introvert, extrovert, or somewhere in between. But here's the catch. It goes against pretty much everything you've been taught about studying. Most students spend their time trying to memorize information. They read, highlight, summarize, and hope something sticks. But Sarah realized that memorization is just the starting point. The real magic happens when you stop trying to remember everything and start doing something else entirely. And that something else is what transformed her from a struggling student into someone who could walk into any exam feeling completely prepared, without the stress, without the all-nighters, and without the constant anxiety that comes with traditional study methods. See, what Sarah figured out is that your brain doesn't actually learn by stuffing information into it like you're packing a suitcase. It learns by making connections, by finding patterns, by linking new stuff to things you already know. But here's where it gets interesting. Most students are accidentally working against their own brain. Think about it. You sit down with your textbook, you read a chapter, maybe you highlight the important parts, and then you close the book thinking you've studied. But what actually happened, you consumed information. You didn't process it. There's a massive difference, and Sarah learned this the hard way. The breakthrough came during her chemistry class. She'd been struggling with molecular structures for weeks, trying to memorize every bond angle and electron configuration like everyone else. Then one day, instead of just reading about it again, she did something different. She started asking herself questions that weren't in the textbook. Not questions like, what is the bond angle of water, but questions like, why does this molecule look like this? What would happen if I change this part? How does this connect to what I learned about acids last week? And suddenly, chemistry wasn't just a bunch of random facts she had to remember. It became a story that made sense. That's when it clicked. Sarah realized she'd been treating her brain like a storage unit when she should have been treating it like a detective. Instead of just filing away information, she started investigating it. Instead of accepting facts, she started connecting dots. The transformation was immediate. Not because she was studying harder, but because she was studying completely differently. While her classmates were still trying to memorize their way through calculus, Sarah was asking why the formulas worked the way they did. While they were cramming vocabulary words, she was figuring out how those words related to concepts she already understood. But here's what really separated Sarah from everyone else. She stopped studying alone. Not in the way you think, though. She didn't join a study group or find a tutor. Instead, she started teaching an invisible classroom. Every night, she'd explain what she learned that day to absolutely no one, out loud, in her own words. It sounds ridiculous, but it worked because teaching forces you to understand something completely differently than just reading about it. When you teach, you can't just regurgitate information. You have to break it down, organize it, and present it in a way that makes sense. And if you can't explain it simply, you don't really understand it. So there you have it. Sarah's secret wasn't some revolutionary study hack or expensive tutoring program. It was simply treating her brain like the detective it's designed to be instead of the filing cabinet everyone told her it should be. She stopped memorizing and started connecting. She stopped consuming and started investigating. And most importantly, she stopped studying in silence and started teaching to an empty room. The funny thing is, Sarah is still that quiet kid in class. She still sits in the back corner, she still doesn't raise her hand every 5 seconds, and she still prefers working alone. But now she's the quiet kid with the highest grades, the one other students come to for help, the one teachers actually notice for all the right reasons. And here's what's really wild. This method works for anyone. It doesn't matter if you're naturally introverted or extroverted, whether you're struggling with math or history, or whether you've been a C student your whole life. Your brain wants to make connections. It's literally designed to find patterns and create understanding. You just have to stop fighting against it and start working with it. The next time you sit down to study, don't ask yourself what you need to remember. Ask yourself what you need to understand. Don't just read the information. Question it, connect it, and then teach it to your bedroom wall. Trust me, your grades will thank you, and so will your stress levels.